My name is Ben, and if you'd told me a year ago I'd be writing this, I would have laughed you out of the room. My wife, Laura, and I had what I thought was a solid marriage, not perfect, but stable. We'd moved to Austin for her new job at a big tech company, and I'd been rooting for her every step of the way. The hours were crazy, the projects demanding, but I tried to play the supportive husband. You know, cooking dinner, cleaning up, even putting together IKEA furniture at midnight. All the little things. Laura started her new job 3 months ago, and at first, she'd come home buzzing with stories, new coworkers, new inside jokes, even some office drama. I was glad for her, really. I wanted her to have friends, to feel like she belonged. But gradually, she stopped sharing as much. Instead, she'd brush me off with, "You wouldn't get it, Ben. It's a work thing." I chalked it up to her adjusting to the company culture. After all, big companies can be cliquey, and I didn't want to come off as clingy or insecure. If anything, I tried to be extra thoughtful, the rock she said she needed. So when Laura mentioned this rooftop team building event, I thought, here's my chance to be the cool husband. I spent most of Thursday night baking blueberry and banana nut muffins, her favorites, and supposedly a hit at her old job. I left a note on her lunch that morning, "See you at the top. Save me a seat." I wanted her coworkers to see she had someone who cared. I remember pulling up to the office, feeling a little self-conscious as I walked in with a giant Tupperware. The lobby was empty and the security guard just waved me through. I kept thinking how dumb I'd feel if Laura didn't want me there, but I shook it off. Up on the rooftop, I could already hear music, laughter, and the sound of glasses clinking. What I didn't expect was the gut punch waiting for me as soon as those doors opened. The first thing I saw before anyone even noticed me was Laura, half turned away from the crowd, standing close to a guy I'd never seen before. He had that look, relaxed, confident, probably a couple years younger than me, with a beard and those startup bro sneakers. I froze for a second. I couldn't quite hear what he was saying, but he leaned in, whispered something, and Laura burst out laughing. Not her polite, "My husband made a pun" laugh, but this wild, free sound I hadn't heard in what felt like forever. There was something about the way she touched his arm, quick, like it wasn't the first time and maybe not supposed to be seen. Instantly, I knew I just crashed a scene I wasn't meant to witness. The whole world felt like it went out of focus, and it was like watching a movie of my own life from the outside. The guy noticed me before Laura did. He straightened up, hands in pockets, glancing my way with this nonchalant, "Oh hey" expression. Then Laura turned, eyes wide for half a heartbeat before she snapped on this big, exaggerated smile. "Ben," she called, her voice louder than it needed to be. "Everyone, look, it's my husband, the jealous one who literally bakes to spy on me." People turned, a few faces I'd never seen before, grinning like I was part of some running joke. I managed a weak smile and held up the muffins like a peace offering. "Hope nobody's allergic," I joked, and there were a couple polite chuckles. Laura practically sprinted over and grabbed my arm, squeezing a little too hard as if she needed to steer the whole room's attention away from what they'd just seen. She didn't waste a beat, launching into her "Ben does everything with me" bit. "Seriously, you guys, we're that couple. We share everything, even his baking disasters." She winked and everyone laughed on cue. "That's just how we do things at home, right, honey?" she said, squeezing my arm even tighter, her nails digging into my sleeve. She made a point of introducing me to everyone at the table except for the guy she'd been whispering with. He just sort of melted back into the crowd, grabbing a beer and checking his phone, not even looking my way again. The whole thing felt weirdly scripted, like Laura had rehearsed this moment for maximum crowd control. Every time I tried to pull her aside or get a word in, she'd turn it into a joke for her coworkers. "Careful, guys, Ben's here to keep me out of trouble. Just don't tell him about our tequila sh*ts last week." Everyone laughed and someone actually raised their glass to me. I laughed along, but my mind was racing. Laura kept up her stand-up routine, telling stories about married life and how this is what happens when your husband has too much free time. She was charming, funny, the life of the party. I watched her, feeling like an outsider at my own wife's event. Every time she caught my eye, her smile tightened just for a second. It was all for show. Eventually, Laura pushed a muffin into my hand and said, "You're not leaving without trying one, right?" I took a bite, mostly to avoid talking. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd walked in on something bigger than just a work party. I tried to chat with a few people, asking about their projects or joking about how Laura was the office legend. Most of them just laughed and drifted back to their own circles. Even the rooftop air felt tense, like everyone was a little too aware of my presence. After a while, I caught Laura glancing over at the guy from earlier. They exchanged the split-second look, her eyes darting, his jaw set, both of them pretending it never happened. Laura grabbed my arm again, steering me toward the drinks table. "Ben, you're embarrassing me," she whispered with a forced smile, low enough that nobody else could hear. "Go say hi to my boss. Please." The please was more like a command. So I did. I wandered around, made small talk, but my mind was stuck on that laugh, that look, that forced performance. Everything suddenly felt different, like I'd just been handed the first clue in a mystery I didn't want to solve. After about 20 minutes, Laura came over and told me she needed to help clean up and that I should head home so I didn't get stuck in Friday traffic. Her voice was bright, her words careful, but her eyes told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not really. Not now. I hugged her goodbye, a stiff, awkward thing, and made my way back to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Laura already turning back to her friends, laughing like nothing had happened. I rode down in silence, muffins still in my hand, my mind spinning with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. On the drive home from Laura's office that Friday, I couldn't get the image out of my head, her, laughing with that guy like I was some distant memory, then flipping the whole script in front of her coworkers. With every mile I put between myself and that rooftop, my mind started unraveling a spool of memories that suddenly made way too much sense. It was like someone had handed me a black light and, for the first time, I could see all the stains I'd been ignoring. I replayed every little weird moment from the last few months, the ones I'd brushed off as quirks or just work stress. There were so many red flags scattered like breadcrumbs I'd refused to follow. It started off small. Laura stopped inviting me to her work events. At first, she said it was just team building or department only, nothing spouses would enjoy. I didn't think much of it. But then it was happy hours, then client dinners, then whole weekends with work retreats. I offered to drop by or pick her up, but she always had a reason why it wouldn't work. "Don't worry, Ben, it's all boring business stuff," she'd say, flashing me a tired smile. Then there were the late nights. She'd text at 8 or 9 p.m., sometimes later, saying, "Sorry, big project, don't wait up." I tried to be understanding, her career meant a lot to her, and I wanted to show trust. But after a while, it felt like work was more than just work. She'd come home exhausted, drained, sometimes even irritable if I asked her about her night. Sometimes she'd shower the moment she walked in the door, not saying a word. But the thing that really got to me, one night I found men's deodorant in her gym bag. She was changing in the bathroom and her stuff was sprawled across our bed. I picked up the stick without thinking, only to see it was some brand I'd never used. When I asked her about it, Laura just rolled her eyes and said, "Ugh, I must have grabbed someone else's at the gym by accident. You know how chaotic it gets in the locker room." She laughed it off, but her voice was too light, too forced. I put it back without another word, but that stuck with me for days. Then came the new clothes, the dresses, the shoes, even new lingerie, all showing up in the laundry or with the tags still on, weeks before our anniversary. I asked her once, joking, "Who are you dressing up for?" She just smiled and said, "For myself, obviously." "You want me to feel confident, right?" She almost sounded offended, so I let it drop. I told myself I was just being paranoid. But it wasn't just that. Laura started guarding her phone like it was a state secret. She used to leave it all over the house, but now she kept it face down or took it into the bathroom with her. Anytime she got a call after 9 p.m., she'd say, "It's work stuff," and walk to another room, lowering her voice. I tried not to eavesdrop, but sometimes I'd catch little phrases, "Don't worry, I'll be there," or her laughing quietly, the way she used to laugh with me. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't get to me. I tried to talk to her about it, to tell her how the distance was making me feel. Each time I brought it up, she'd sigh and say, "Ben, you're overthinking this. I'm working hard for us, for our future. Why do you always have to make it about trust?" Sometimes she'd get angry, snapping at me, "I can't do this if you're going to be jealous all the time. You're suffocating me." I hated making her upset, so I started swallowing my questions. But the doubts never went away. They only grew, fueled by every unanswered text, every "I'll be home late" that turned into her coming in at midnight, smelling of perfume I didn't recognize. Once, she left her work email open on our laptop, and I couldn't help but notice a string of late-night messages, her and a coworker joking and making plans that had nothing to do with business. I tried to convince myself it was all innocent, but deep down, I knew better. I found myself making excuses for her over and over. She's tired. She's stressed. It's a tough industry. But that Friday, standing on that rooftop, watching her slip so easily into another life, one that didn't include me, I couldn't ignore it anymore. On the surface, nothing in our marriage had changed. We still ate dinner together, binge-watched bad reality TV, texted each other about groceries and bills. But underneath, everything felt different. The Laura I knew, the Laura who used to curl up next to me and share every stupid detail about her day, was slipping away, replaced by someone who smiled less, laughed less, and looked at me like I was just another item on her to-do list. And for the first time I had to ask myself, what if she'd already left and I just hadn't noticed? That night, lying in bed beside her, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her breathing. I wanted to reach for her, to shake her awake and make her tell me the truth. But instead, I just lay there, replaying every moment that had led me here, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. After that Friday, everything Laura did seemed suspicious, even the smallest things. She could tell, too. She'd get defensive if I so much as glanced at her phone or asked about her day. I started feeling like a stranger in my own house, tiptoeing around to keep the peace, all while my gut screamed that something was really wrong. A week later, she told me she'd have to stay late at the office for a night brainstorming session. She said it so casually, not even looking up from her phone. "Don't wait up," she tossed over her shoulder as she headed out the door. I watched her drive away, feeling completely powerless. But that night, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the way she barely said goodbye, or maybe I was just tired of feeling crazy. I grabbed my phone, opened Instagram, and started searching through her coworkers' profiles. Most of them kept things private, but one of the guys, Dylan, the office clown I'd met once at happy hour, posted stories all the time. He'd tagged Laura a few times before, so I figured, why not check? It didn't take long. There, right at the top of his story, was a video from the rooftop, timestamped an hour ago. I tapped it and my heart just stopped. The video panned across the party, fairy lights strung up, people dancing, someone holding a cocktail and laughing at the camera. Then, clear as day, it landed on Laura. She was right in the middle of the frame, slow dancing with the same guy from the week before, the one who'd whispered in her ear. His arms were around her waist and hers were looped behind his neck. She looked up at him, grinning, and then, without even a hint of hesitation, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a friendly, oops, too many drinks kind of kiss. It was long, familiar, comfortable, like they'd done it 100 times before. In the background, I could hear people cheering, someone shouting their names. Laura pulled back, laughing, and then hugged him tightly like she didn't care who saw. I felt sick. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. I watched the video twice, 3 times, trying to convince myself I was seeing it wrong, that there was some explanation. But there wasn't. It was all there, in high definition, for anyone who cared to see. I took **TS of everything. I saved the video before it could disappear. I went through the rest of Dylan's stories, finding a few more **TS of Laura and the guy sitting close, sharing drinks, whispering. There was no mistaking it. This wasn't some innocent work party, and I wasn't being paranoid. This was real. This was proof. For a few minutes, I just sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the wall. My mind was racing, anger, betrayal, heartbreak, all of it crashing over me in waves. I kept thinking about all those times Laura accused me of being jealous, of not trusting her. About how she laughed it off in front of her coworkers, making me look like a fool. She hadn't just lied to me, she'd made me the punchline of her joke. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to call her right then, to scream, to demand she come home and explain herself. But another part, maybe the smarter part, told me to wait. To collect everything. To make sure there was no way she could twist the truth or shift the blame like she always did. I sat in the dark, scrolling through every text, every memory, searching for some clue I'd missed. It all felt so obvious now, the late nights, the sudden interest in her looks, the constant work calls. I wondered how long it had been going on. Weeks? Months? Had it ever really been about work? The hours crawled by. Around midnight, Laura finally texted, "Heading home soon. Sorry, it ran late. Love you." I stared at the message, feeling nothing but emptiness. I didn't reply. I just kept replaying that video in my mind, over and over, until I couldn't feel anything at all. For the first time since we'd moved to Austin, I realized I didn't know my own wife anymore. And I wasn't sure I ever really had. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling as the shadows crept across the walls. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd keep calm, how I wouldn't let her turn this around on me. I told myself I wouldn't yell, wouldn't beg for explanations. I just wanted the truth even if it hurt. When Laura finally came home, the clock read 12:37 a.m. I heard her keys jangling at the door, the quiet click of her shoes on the hardwood floor. She came in carrying her purse and a plastic bag of leftovers, humming to herself like nothing in the world was wrong. I waited in the living room, lights low, the phone with the video resting on the coffee table in front of me. Laura froze when she saw me, a little startled. Maybe she'd expected me to be asleep, like always. Hey, she said, forcing a casual tone as she slipped off her jacket. Why are you up? I told you not to wait. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, really looked, trying to find any trace of the woman I used to know. She dropped her bag on the counter and busied herself with something in the fridge, avoiding my eyes. We need to talk, I said, voice flat, too exhausted for anger. She stiffened for a split second, then turned with a too bright smile. Sure, what's up? I'm seriously beat. Can it wait? No. Sit down. I gestured to the couch. Laura hesitated, scanning my face, then slowly sat. I reached for my phone, opened the gallery, and handed it to her. Just watch. She barely glanced at the first screen *T, her face going pale. When the video started to play, she actually flinched like she'd been slapped. I watched her eyes dart back and forth, searching for some way out, some angle. When it ended, she set the phone down slowly, her hands shaking. Then don't, I cut her off, my voice barely above a whisper. Just, don't lie. I saw everything. It's all right there. She blinked fast, her jaw clenching. Then, in that old familiar move, she tried to flip it back on me. Were you spying on me? How long have you been checking up on my friends, my social media, my... Stop, I said, holding up a hand. This isn't about me. Don't even try to make it about me. You lied to me. You've been seeing him behind my back. At work. At parties. Tonight. Laura's eyes filled with tears, but she pressed her lips together, fighting to keep her composure. It's not what it looks like, Ben. You don't understand. It just happened. I was drinking, everyone was. We were blowing off steam, it got out of hand, eh? I shook my head, not even bothering to hide my disbelief. You think I'm stupid? You've been getting close for months. This isn't just one night. You didn't just trip and fall into his arms, Laura. She looked away, silent for a long moment. Then she tried something new, she got angry. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to find someone else to talk to. You've been distant, Ben. You've been acting like I'm a burden, like you don't even care what I do anymore. I let her talk. Let her get it out. I'd heard it all before, how it was my fault, how her choices were somehow about my failings. Right, I said, voice hollow. It's my fault you lied. My fault you cheated. My fault you spent months making me feel like I was losing my mind. She stared at the floor, her hands twisted in her lap. For a second, I thought she might actually apologize. But she didn't. She just sat there, swallowing back tears. So what now, she said finally, her voice barely audible. I don't know, I admitted. But I can't keep pretending. I can't keep acting like none of this happened. Laura looked up at me, desperation flickering in her eyes. Ben, please. I made a mistake. We can work through this, therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just don't give up on us. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was just a terrible lapse in judgment, that things could go back to how they were. But I couldn't. Something in me had broken, and no amount of apologies could fix it. I stood up, running a hand through my hair. I need space, I said, voice rough. I need to figure out what comes next. Don't talk to me right now. She reached for me, but I stepped away. I mean it, Laura. I can't even look at you. I left the room in silence, closing the door behind me. The house felt colder than ever. The next morning, she tried again, texting me from the other room, leaving notes on the kitchen table, begging for another chance. She cried, promised to cut things off, swore she'd change. But it was too late. The trust was gone. For the first time in a long time, I put myself first. I packed a bag and left for a few days, crashing at my brother's place, letting the reality of everything settle in. I didn't answer her calls. I needed to remember who I was before I started doubting every instinct, every gut feeling. I needed to figure out if there was anything left worth saving, or if I just had to walk away. And for the first time, the thought of being alone felt less scary than the idea of living with another lie. The days after that confrontation passed in a blur. I kept thinking maybe I'd wake up and realize it was all just a nightmare, some stress-fueled hallucination. But every morning I woke up on my brother's couch, staring at a stack of takeout containers and my half-zipped duffel bag. Reality hit all over again. This was my life now. This was really happening. Laura messaged me constantly, texts, emails, voicemails. At first, they were full of apologies. Please, Ben, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. When I didn't respond, the tone changed. She started blaming me again. If you hadn't been so cold, maybe I wouldn't have looked for attention elsewhere. Then it swung back to begging. Can we talk? Just once. I ignored them all. I told myself I needed space. But the truth was, I just couldn't handle her voice in my head anymore. It was almost a relief to go back to work. My coworkers could tell something was wrong, but they didn't press. I buried myself in projects, stayed late, volunteered for weekend shifts. Anything to avoid going home and facing what I'd lost. At night, I'd scroll through my phone, reading and rereading the messages and **TS I'd saved. Like some kind of punishment. I'd stare at that video until the faces blurred, trying to convince myself I'd missed some crucial detail that would make it all okay. But I never did. About a week later, something happened that I never saw coming. I was sitting at a coffee shop after work, sipping burnt black coffee and pretending to answer emails, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hey Ben, I hope this isn't weird, but my name is Greg. I think we need to talk. It's about Laura." For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my mind racing. I almost deleted it, just another spam message, maybe. But curiosity got the better of me, so I replied, "What do you mean?" Within a few minutes, Greg sent a long text explaining that he'd been dating Laura for a couple of months. He hadn't known she was married. He only found out when he saw a picture of us together on her social media, which she'd apparently forgotten to scrub. He said he felt sick about it and wanted to meet up if I was willing. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect, but something about his message felt genuine. So we agreed to meet up at a bar downtown the next night. Greg turned out to be nothing like I imagined. He was nervous, almost apologetic, and looked about as tired as I felt. We swapped stories, compared timelines, pieced together the web Laura had spun. It was surreal, almost like sitting across from a version of myself in some alternate universe. The truth hit hard. This wasn't a one-off mistake or some whirlwind office romance. Laura had been living a double life, telling each of us what we wanted to hear. Greg showed me messages and photos, even receipts from trips they'd taken together on weekends. She told me she was working late. I felt a weird sense of camaraderie with him, two strangers blindsided by the same lie. It was almost comforting to know I wasn't the only one fooled, but at the same time, it made the betrayal feel deeper. That night, on the drive home, everything just clicked. I realized I didn't need to prove anything to Laura or anyone else. The truth was all the closure I'd ever get. The next day, I filed for divorce. Quietly, no drama, no shouting matches or revenge fantasies. I just did it. The lawyer told me it would move quickly, given the circumstances and the evidence. For the first time since everything started, I felt a sliver of relief, like a weight was lifting, slowly but surely. The fallout for Laura came faster than I expected. News of her affair spread through her office. Apparently, someone had seen the rooftop video on social media, and the story made its way around the company in record time. Laura went from golden girl to office pariah practically overnight. She tried to smooth things over, tried to act like nothing was wrong, but people stopped talking to her. Whispers followed her everywhere. Eventually, HR got involved. When word reached her manager about the multiple relationships, including some with coworkers, she was quietly let go. The finality of it all hit me on a random Tuesday as I sat in my half-empty apartment eating Chinese takeout alone. I felt free. Not happy, not yet, but free. Free from the secrets, the gaslighting, the constant feeling that I was always one step away from losing everything. And the unexpected twist? I kept in touch with Greg. He reached out a few days after the divorce was finalized, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. We ended up talking for hours, not just about Laura, but about life, trust, how to start over when you lose the future you thought you had. We joked that maybe we should start a club for people who'd been lured. A few months later, we did kind of. We opened a small coffee shop together, a place where nobody had to pretend or keep secrets. It was the strangest, most unexpected new beginning of my life. And for the first time in years, I looked forward to something again. Just when I thought things couldn't get more surreal, the universe had one more twist to throw at me. A couple of weeks after the divorce papers were filed, I got a message on Facebook from a guy named Josh. His profile picture was nothing special, just a regular guy, early 30s, friendly smile. But his message stopped me cold. "Hey Ben, I'm sorry if this is weird. I think we should talk. It's about Laura." My stomach dropped. I knew instantly what was coming, but I called him anyway. We talked for nearly an hour, piecing together dates, texts, and photos. Josh had been seeing Laura for almost as long as Greg, sometimes overlapping with both of us. He even sent me selfies they'd taken together on a weekend Laura had sworn she was at a women's leadership retreat. As humiliating as it was, I felt a weird relief. It confirmed everything. Laura hadn't just betrayed me with one guy, or even two, she'd been running her own private circus of secrets. When I told Greg, he just shook his head and laughed bitterly, joking that maybe we should start a reality show. I collected every scrap of evidence, *TS, messages, receipts, hotel bookings. Not out of spite, but because I needed closure. The truth stung, but it was better than the constant guessing, the endless replaying of old arguments in my head. With every new fact, I realized Laura's world was shrinking. Friends dropped away, her reputation was toast, and every desperate apology she sent me felt emptier than the last. After all the lies and chaos, Laura did what she always did. She tried to come back. She called, left voicemails, even wrote letters promising therapy, change, anything to fix what she'd broken. But her words meant nothing. The trust was gone. Even her old friends wanted distance. The rumors at her office snowballed into an HR scandal. She was first demoted, then fired outright. For the first time, she was alone with the consequences of her choices. Strangely, it was Greg and Josh, the two other Bens in her life, who helped me heal. The three of us, thrown together by betrayal, started meeting up, sharing stories, making each other laugh when we could. Eventually, we pulled what little we had left and opened that small coffee shop downtown, something simple but honest. We even started a support group for people like us, people who'd been blindsided by those they loved. Day by day, I rebuilt. My world was smaller but finally genuine. I stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped waiting for the next shoe to drop. I felt free, truly free, for the first time in years. As for Laura, she faded into the background, a cautionary tale in a city that quickly forgets. I wished her no harm, but I didn't need to carry her mistakes anymore. Instead, I found gratitude in my own pain and in the most unexpected friendships. I discovered life after heartbreak, messy, honest, and absolutely my own.